we want to call the meeting to order for the Board of Water and Wastewater Commissioners at the Harwich Water Department at 196 Chatham Road, Harwich, Mass. for Wednesday, November 30th, 2022 at 11:30 a.m. Can I get a motion for the consent agenda for the minutes for October 26th, 2022 and November 9th, 2022?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. All right, next we have an abatement for 186 Main Street. So are you here for 186?
Oh, I came up first, huh?
You're top of the list.
That's good, getting in and out.
So, just looking back
Yeah.
on your history for the month of November, for September, going back to 2003, it goes, you have 116,000 gallons, 2004 is 118,000 gallons, 2006 is 130,000 gallons, 2011 is 127,000 gallons, 2016 is 160,000, 2017 is 94, 2018 is 91, 2020 is 120, 2021 is 82, and the final one that you're here for is the $600 is 103,000. So it seems like all your usage is right in line.
Well, my usage would be right in line if I was doing my normal usage,
Okay.
but I wasn't able to water 3 times a week during the month of July. August, there was no watering at all. September, there was no watering at all. So to me, it's how we get to that figure is wrong. I only went back 3 years, but the time that we had the 120,000 gallons for that quarter, I had a nursery going, I was growing plants, I was watering everything. I had my darling wife and daughter with me for the summer, and all girls like to be clean, so the washer was going, everything was going full-time all the time. All right, the next year, which was a normal year, where I still had, my gardens and everything going, my nursery going and all that, I used, as you said, what, 83 or something?
82, 21.
82,000, so, to jump up to 100 and whatever it was.
103.
For that last quarter where I did no watering at all outside.
You have irrigation?
I have no leaks. There's nothing wrong at the house. They came and replaced the meter that was prior to me receiving the bill, and that's why I called to say, hey, what's up with this? It seems, I don't complain about it, okay? And if I thought that I was using that amount of water, I would say, okay, pay the bill. But it's impossible for me to use that amount of water because I wasn't watering as usual. Okay, that's my issue. And the year before, watering as usual, I used less water. The year before that, I had a lot of people. Probably the years that you go back to 160 something, I had kids.
2016.
It's just my wife and I, and minimum laundry, the whole deal. So that's why I complain. That's my issue, and I'm, like I said, I don't complain about much.
So one thing, if I can just point out on the usage history. So if you look at the readings from 6/22 and 3/21, you see an E next to the date.
Yep.
Those were two estimated reads. So for those 2 meter readings, we were unable to get an actual meter read for the property.
So it is actual?
So
your
water
bill caught up with you.
Right, so the 39,000 and the 2,000 gallons from those
It's substantially less, right?
are substantially
Right.
less, and those are based off the prior 2 years' similar quarters. So if you go back to
Yep.
June,
21.
yeah, you can see that those are 2,000. So it's an average based off historic usage
Why are
for
we
those
doing
quarters.
estimates at that point? Was it a problem with the meter?
Yeah, sometimes we can't get a meter reading. Usually we don't go out and change them on the first missed read, because sometimes they'll read the next time. So this one it's typically after 2 consecutive missed reads that we go in and replace the meter.
Here we have 3.
So when we do go in, we have an estimate March of 21, we had 2 actuals, June and September of 21, in December of 21, and then 2 estimates in March and June of 22.
All right.
So it's likely that he didn't use the 103,000 during the September quarter,
Gotcha.
but it was likely spread out amongst the
I'm
2
not here in
estimated
the winter
periods.
time, so I only had 1 quarter. prior to that. So my water usage still shouldn't be what it was at. I don't care about your quarter to quarter and history to history. If you go back in all my history, all my water bills are the same. The usage is always the same.
Actually, they're not,
All of a
because,
sudden, boom.
well, actually, like Dan's saying, they're not all the same, because you only charge for 2,000 gallons on 1, 2, 3 separate occasions, so.
Okay.
Any additional discussion?
I'm at your mercy.
I'm just, so in October of 2019, you might just want to see if I'm reading this right. The usage was 102,000 gallons, is that correct? And that would that be the same amount of reading as the reading for the 103,000?
Same billing period, yeah.
Same time period. So, and do you have an irrigation system, sir?
I do, and I use it every season except for this season.
So-
I was only able to water 3 times a week in July and not at all in August and September.
Did you have a plumber come and turn off that system? Like close it
All
down?
you do is turn it down.
No?
He's in that business.
I'm in the business, so I know what's
Oh, okay.
going on.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering if there's a leak.
No, there's
No.
There's nothing wrong with the system.
She-
It's
No.
just,
I'm just confused.
Noreen?
Rob, I was going to ask this question before I heard you in the business, so now it's going to sound kind of silly.
no, that's okay.
But, I mean, if there's only 2 in your house, have you ever looked at the meter when nobody's in the shower and the washer's on, just to see if it's steady, not spinning?
Well, my office is in the basement, so I'm from here to that wall away from the meter.
So have you looked at it?
Constantly look at everything, and the fan's not spinning.
It's not
There's
spinning.
no water usage outside the house, inside the house. I have no leaks, I have no puddles, I have nothing running. Bill Chase is my plumber, and my place is tight.
It's hard to believe the meter isn't spinning and you can be registered 103,000 gallons. It's got to spin sometime.
But as you can see, they came and they changed that meter out, so there was obviously something wrong somewhere along the line, and that's not.
It wasn't reading. We have 3 missed,
Right.
3
Right.
estimates. So
Okay,
it wasn't
well,
reading.
your estimates are your estimates. My actual usage is not what I'm being billed for, and my history goes back to, you can go, every quarter is basically close to the same. And in this summer where I couldn't water at all, we showered, we washed dishes, we did laundry. You know, my irrigation and the years that I could use it were probably more than half of the usage. Because I watered like a banshee to keep things, I'm in the business, it's an advertisement for me. I grew plants, I had a vegetable garden. This past season, I had none of that going on. It's just me and my wife. There's no outside water whatsoever.
Anything else? Motion?
I'm just perplexed, like
Yeah.
from an
I mean-
engineering plumbing perspective,
Well, I'm
does
just
any of
saying,
this
because
make?
it's not an actual. that
But
maybe
this
we-
is, the 103 is the actual. So-
Right.
and So
Right.
the 103 is based on the difference between the meter reading in 12/20/21 and when it was read in
Okay.
September.
Then the meter was replaced.
So
when
it's
the meter
a
was
year's,
placed. So
year's
when we
worth
go
of
out-
water?
So, no, meaning the only actual meter readings we had. So we had an actual meter reading. When the estimates are done, those are based on the prior years. When the meter's changed out, the actual meter reading is confirmed in person and then compared against usage that was estimated to determine that it was all billed for. So he's probably right in that he didn't use 103,000 gallons during the summer quarter. There was likely usage instead of the 39,000 gallons that was billed previously. You know, the prior quarter, there's probably more consumption in the prior quarters that were estimated. But we're not capturing it until we get the physical read on the meter. Because prior to having eyes on it, we're relying upon the radio connection to the meter and past usage. So when we go in to change it out, we get the actual meter reading, it, compare it against estimates, In other situations, these result in a credit to the account, where we go in and find that the meter registered less than what we estimated. So this is just a accounting of that.
And it is, I mean, somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but looking at fall of 2019, fall of 2020, except for fall of 2021, those previous years kind of are very similar to this year, correct? Do you
Right,
follow?
but the fact of the matter is, similar to this year, I couldn't use water as at will because I had no irrigation for 3 months. And like I said before, most of my water consumption is irrigation during those months. I mean, the irrigation's on every other day. The gardens is being watered every day. The nursery is being watered every day. The vegetable garden was every day.
And you did that
My
through
kids were with me
2021?
I did that up till I stopped the nursery in, October 21.
Because I think, because if you look at the numbers from 2021, they're lower dollar-wise, and I'm wondering if some of that usage, I don't know.
What Dan's saying is if you look under this column right here, right where the A's are and the E's,
Yeah,
we didn't get readings. Where the E's are, those were estimates.
okay.
So if you look at the E's, you're looking at 39,000 gallons, 2,000 gallons, 24,000 gallons, go down to 21, 2,000 gallons.
Right.
So substantially less than what the normal pumpage is. So when the meter was replaced, and they went back and they got the actuals, that's why, like Dan's saying, he probably didn't use the 103,000 gallons in that month of September, but the water usage caught up, and that's why the bill is $600.08. The bill finally caught up
Okay. So
to
the
the
water,
usage.
the usage was there.
Because they were only being billed for 39,000 gallons, 2,000 gallons, 42,000 gallons. So the bill was $54.58, which is substantially low.
And when was that?
Okay.
So that's,
That was
That was-
6/21,
So in other words, if he had pumped over the summer,
3/22.
it would have been much higher
So
than 600.
322 would be the bill that I'm not there.
6/22 is
Yes, he was underestimated.
191 gallons, 191,000. Right, that's why they were doing estimates, because we didn't get an actual reading.
I don't understand estimates as to actuals. I don't understand why. How long was that old meter in my house for? I don't remember it ever being replaced in the 30 years that I was there. And all of a sudden, we have a meter replacement, we have no water usage, and my bill is substantially, the gallons substantially more than it was.
But-
We can talk about all this actuals and the bill finally caught up to me, but I don't think so.
Okay, well, that, I mean, that you're
I don't
right,
think
and you're
so.
entitled.
You know, like
But your bill,
like I said to the girl.
sir, just give me 1 second, I'm just trying to explain something, okay?
I get it.
You were also, your bill at one point for 3/21 and 6/22 was $64, which is substantially less than what your other bills have been.
I don't remember a bill ever being that cheap. Jay, I don't remember my water ever being that cheap. So, but you say
3/21
so.
is $64.70.
Yeah, that's fine.
That was an
So
estimate.
I'll just pay the whole 600 because that's what I told the lady I ended up doing anyway.
3/22 is
This was
$54.
just a big waste of my time.
I'm sorry you feel that way, you try to be very fair here.
It's not fair to me. I don't care what you need to say.
But you have a right to appeal if you don't like our decision. You do have a right to
What's that?
appeal, you have a right to appeal our decision if you don't
When
like it.
do I appeal and how?
Well,
do
we're
I-
gonna vote right now.
It's not gonna change.
Sir, I'm just
I
trying
know
to...
how it works, man. It's not gonna
Okay.
change.
We're all set. Is there a motion to approve or deny?
I'll make a motion to deny.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. You have a right to take it to the appeals court if you want to appeal it.
And it
that's
doesn't
your
go
right.
to
I've lived in
us.
this town all my life, and this is the first time I've ever...
You
had an
don't
issue about
appeal it
anything,
through
and
us.
The issue is the issue. Okay, I didn't use that water. I didn't use that water.
It went through your
The
meter.
meter didn't catch up to me. The
Okay.
meter was faulty. That's why he came out and changed it. So
Okay.
Thanks very much. I appreciate it. You all have a good day. And just like I said, this is a total waste of time.
All right,
Here, I'll probably do double good.
all right. So we're going to skip the old business, so not hold it to the town administrator, and we'll go to the wastewater funding sources and uses. All right. Dan, do you want to just take us through,
Yeah, just for a little background, with phase 3 coming, wastewater operations now online, really just trying to gather consensus amongst all the boards, committees, folks involved with wastewater as to appropriate funding sources and uses. This really stemmed, I think, from special town meeting where we had started discussing using sewer enterprise funds for the purchase of easements for pump stations, and where historically CWMP-related items have been funded from the general fund. This was somewhat in contrast with past practice, so just to try to get a discussion going so there'd be consensus moving forward with that regard.
so this is the draft that you sent to the town hall?
Yep.
Joe, did you have a chance to look at this? Is this?
I did, and actually, first of all, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thanks, everybody, thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming in, appreciate
Thanks
it.
for taking me out of order. Dan and I did meet yesterday to talk specifically about the document in your packet, and we've been talking ongoing, as Dan has mentioned, overall, so I have lots of information to back up any conversation we have. The only thing I want to put out on the record before we get into depth is anything that I say today has not yet gone to the Board of Selectmen.
Right, I understand.
But, you know, Dan and I talked about that, and he said you folks would know that. so.
Right. So, I mean, I think we're just trying to, so that we're all on the same page, because there are a lot of hands in the cookie jar. The sewer enterprise fund would solely, those funds would solely be for the existing sewer to maintain the infrastructure of the sewer source, sewer department, I guess. The sewer enterprise fund.
Is that a question or a statement?
Both. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, my understanding is that sewer enterprise is for the operations.
Okay,
And that's how I've been trying to simply keep it in my brain.
Okay.
For the 3.5 years I've been here.
okay. And then for future construction, design, those funds would come out of the CWMP?
Yeah, CWMP with additional sources.
Right, okay.
Is that fair to say?
Yeah, general fund, wastewater special purpose stabilization, upon it receiving funding.
Okay. Am I missing something else?
Well, the WIF, which we haven't, the WIF is a concept right now, the Water Infrastructure Investment Fund. Just the backstory I can give you on that is, I know when we were in discussions with DHY, Yarmouth did adopt a WIF locally, and they were using the WIF as well as, I believe, a stabilization fund to fund debt service related to their wastewater management plan. If I recall correctly, Rich Bienvedu, who was their finance director at the time, had indicated that between the WIF and their other funding mechanisms, their wastewater plan essentially wasn't going to have an impact on the tax rate. Harwich has not adopted a WIF yet. In our discussions yesterday, Joe brought up a table from a couple of years ago that actually had WIF FY24, FY25. So it's been kind of batted around a few years ago, but that's one that hasn't been established that I think, I guess, turn it back to you.
Yeah, if I could build on that, Dan and I, with our former finance director, Carol Coppola, had talked as early as January, February of 2020, because as Dan said, you know, the two of us now being in the room on DHY at the time, hearing what the other potential partner town were doing, we were very interested in that. So we have the framework, when I say we, I mean the town, Board of Selectmen Administration, have the framework of a warrant article, a motion, and the resultant ballot question, should the board want to proceed in that manner for the WIF. We're just waiting for the go-ahead, if you will.
Okay.
When we first vetted it, and my notes go back to February of 2020, the chair at the time didn't want to get into it yet, and he wasn't referring to pandemic, which happened a month later. It was more trying to see what the financial picture would be like when the land bank debt comes off the books, which is scheduled for fiscal year 24. And so that's why we're contemplating that 24-25 time frame. So we have the mechanics in place
to really jumpstart that conversation on the WIF as an additional funding source to really give relief on these projects.
I do have a question, Noreen. So,
Can I ask a quick clarification?
Please, go ahead.
Sorry, I just had to sip up. So the WIF is just the town of Harwich, this is not the regional?
Right, so, right, a
Just for
WIF would be something the
clarification.
town would do.
Just the town, okay.
Correct.
Okay.
go again, Noreen.
No need to get anybody. Okay, so, as Dan said, with so much possibly coming up next spring, we kind of wanted to get which duck was in which row and get them all happy. And so, I love, this was Dan's idea, this chart, and I absolutely love it. Because we get a lot of questions about wastewater projects in general, and we have to, what I do is, try to remind people that we don't actually make those, decisions, but it gets confusing for the public because, of course, Dan is involved in those decisions. So we do our best to, walk that fence, and we'll continue to do that. I just, on this fourth column, which would actually be the only one that we control, and of course, it's the sewer enterprise fund, including retained earnings from the sewer. The only thing I would add to this chart is where it says on the first line, capital expenses. I just want to emphasize that that's capital expenses for completed and connected phases only. I wonder if we can even add that to the chart, because it's so easy for somebody to look quick and say, oh, capital, good, we can use that for any new thing, and it's not. It would be our capital expenses for anything we had to add on to phase 2, currently phase 3 in the future.
But you said adding to existing, correct?
Right,
Yep.
yeah. They could be capital, we might need a new pump station, something like that for the existing area.
Generators.
Yeah, a generator, yeah, so maybe we can clarify that, because other people, I get nervous with it. I know what Dan says when he says WW facility improvements, but, 5 years from now, somebody could look at that and say, hey, it says capital, so we'll go on from there. And then the only other clarification I would make, Joe, is, and, you have to talk a lot, so it could have just been said quickly, but I thought I heard you say at some meeting sometime that the second column, the wastewater special purpose stabilization, begins in January of ’23.
So I did say that, and
Okay.
I've since evaluated it, and it's a misstatement by me.
Okay,
Both of the special purpose stabilization funds began with the beginning of this fiscal year,
That's right.
July 1.
yeah,
The reference, and the thing that's still stuck in my brain,
yeah,
is the January 1st, ’23 opening of the increase of the short-term
that's right.
and hotel
Yeah,
motels.
yeah,
So
okay.
thank you for that.
Just so you know you're being watched.
I didn't know that, but I appreciate that, and I do appreciate the opportunity to correct the record.
Yeah, no problem. And, okay, so with that said, I just want to be really clear about one thing as we go on to May, when there'll be a big build-up and so much going on. And that is, as Dan said, what brought this to our discussion table was, I know back in August with the special town meeting, there was some talk about the easements for West Harwich for the Route 28 business to be paid out of sewer retained earnings. And that is what brought us discussing this, because that's not an expense of the sewer enterprise fund. The easements for future construction would be part of what comes out of any of these other 3 funds that somebody would want. Those are easements for phase 4, maybe, we don't even know what phase that's going to be, but it's certainly not phase 2. And right now, the only things that we cover, and our sewer enterprise fund, including retained earnings covers, is phase 2,
Agreed. What I would say is back then, if you remember, that was when we were still shooting for a September date.
Right,
We, administration, finance, and working with Dan on that particular article, were trying to identify any number of funding sources.
right,
it was one of the sources that was mentioned through council, so we wanted to vet it.
Yeah.
But didn't go that way, it wouldn't have gone that way on that one.
Okay, because what it effectively would have done would have been to vote us into deficit,
Right.
which then the state would have caused us severe extra meetings and work. So we kind of just wanted to get that out there. So in other words, to finish the loop, I know the Board of Selectmen had a desire to take those funds that were used from the generation of the correction of the Monomoy status. And I don't know if it's still going or not, there was some discussion about having an article in May to return those funds to the tax rate for the people of the...
Correct. That is on the list of draft articles. The only thing I want to be careful about is, I don't know that the action would necessarily be a return.
Okay, yeah.
So the concept is relief.
Right, okay.
So that is still in the mix, and
Yeah.
that is
Okay.
very much a directive of the board.
So what I'm closing the loop with is to say, when you go to do that, do not include that 70,000 that you contemplated as coming from our retained earnings in that.
Correct.
Because that never should have gone.
Correct.
Anyway, it would all have to be from free cash.
Correct, that's
Okay.
totally agreed.
Yeah, all right, wow, that's pretty, no, but I mean, I love this idea because there's going to be a lot going on in the spring. So.
Absolutely. Dan, when we talked yesterday, and just on the list here, were we going to include the water protection fund revenue as well?
So, I would,
Because I was thinking we
It's
had
there.
four buckets. and
yeah,
say
I
that.
guess it's not, the only reason I would say not to keep that, I guess, in these 4 columns is because it's not something that we necessarily control. Like, we can't vote to appropriate money out of it.
Sure.
It's
Yeah.
kind of, it's granted
It's
to us
dangling
through
out there, but
that
it's not
process,
ours.
yeah, through that SRF process. So,
Yeah.
while it is a benefit, not necessarily.
What is the process to take money out of
So, as I understand it, it is all through the SRF process. So we submitted our project evaluation forms. I actually just saw a letter come through last week from Cape Cod Commission blessing our project evaluation form submittal, saying they were in compliance with the 208 plan and everything. So it's through that MEPA review process, as I understand it, that the Cape and Islands Water Protection Fund is made aware of all the pending Cape Cod projects, and that the Water Protection Fund then votes to authorize the principal forgiveness in an amount, as I believe, up to 25% of the principal cost. So it is, I believe it kind of happens autonomously on its own through the official DEP funding process.
And the vote itself, like how
I would
is
have
that?
to defer to Don on that, because I believe he's,
He is the town's representative on that board.
Are they, like, are they trying to,
it? Who's the representative?
Don Howell,
Oh,
are they trying, and I was on the earlier board, the wastewater task force that merged into that. Are they trying to, like, do a scenario where it's equitable distribution of funds throughout all of the
They all- so,
towns?
yeah.
And the reason I
Yes.
ask is because there were some heavy
yeah,
hitters from the Barnstable area that were not as interested in smaller towns.
I believe they're, I can't speak for the board, right, but I
Yeah.
think that they're, as I understand it, they're, no one has pulled out yet, as far as I know. This is all funded through the county, through the state, and there's representatives from each community that vote, are on this board. I believe that the intent is for it to be equitable. I think the concern arises around communities like Brewster, who only have a very small amount of sewering to do, who aren't going to be getting multi-millions of dollars in principal forgiveness, so why are they signing on to commit all this money to it? I'm not aware of anyone pulling out or anything happening to that effect, but I think that's the potential, if it had ever happened.
Otherwise, we're gonna send you in. Otherwise, we're sending you in. Give us the money.
But I think it's pretty,
No, it's good-
I think
good to clarify.
it's pretty much guaranteed, I don't want to I think it's pretty much guaranteed. If the funding's there, eligible projects will get that 25%. I don't know that they've run into a situation where they have too many projects and not enough money yet.
That's my question, I guess. Okay.
Okay.
So we're all on the same page.
Yeah, which is great.
All right.
Not surprising to me, but.
No, no.
Could be confirmed.
Lot going on this year.
Absolutely.
Just one question.
But I would love that addition made to that chart before it
Yeah.
gets,
I noticed that legal expenses comes out of the sewer enterprise fund. Now, the sewer, legal expenses could eat up the whole fund.
where is he?
No, that's on the left, on the general
Oh,
fund.
this,
Yeah, this
oh,
comes from the
this-
select board.
oh,
Yeah.
I missed that. General fund, free cash. Okay. All right, I'm with you. A little slow. Okay,
All right, so we good, Mr. Thompson?
I'm good.
All right, while the town administrator, let's go on and go over the water and sewer enterprise fund free cash. I see the water free cash, I don't see the
The
water.
sewer's not in there.
And sewer didn't make it in.
No, but I have
Too
it.
early?
No, I've got it right here.
It was the last section of the report.
Yeah,
It's
Maureen has it.
277,550.
277.
$277,550 is the sewer.
Do we have a copy of that?
Yeah.
You do have a copy
Yeah.
of that?
This one has
I can-
notes
I
on
can
it.
run you a copy of it. Yeah, it didn't make it in the packet.
All right,
I don't know if they want it with my notes or...
that's all right.
I can print it to you.
That's fine.
Wait,
277, what was it?
What
Maureen?
title would that have?
We don't have it.
It's not in
the
the
packet.
packet.
That's why, it's not in the
Yeah.
packet, that's why.
277,550.
277,550.
Which, you know, that can be used to lower our subsidy next May, if anybody needs to.
And
Well, it's true.
and the water free cash number is $2,199,380.
Yep.
Just while Joe was here at school.
Which is great.
All right,
Yeah.
I think we're good, Mr. Powers.
Excellent, thank you very
Unless he
much.
wants to hear about water restrictions.
Unless you want to stay for the water restrictions.
Huh?
I said, thank you, everybody.
Town charter.
Unless you want to hear about water restrictions. You can stay. You don't have to.
He's looking really
Yeah. Usually Joe likes to stay when I'm here.
It's a lot better picture.
She's running, I see him running.
Thank you.
So, yeah, thank you, Joe.
Yeah, I didn't realize that they're all different.
Yeah, and then I missed one, I told her about it, she
I don't
said.
have that. Am I missing that paperwork?
It's, what, the sewer one?
No, the town charter bylaw discussion.
Yeah, I don't think there was anything in the packet.
No, there's nothing.
So town charter bylaw discussion. Did
Completed,
you, is that the,
completed,
These kind of go hand in hand.
okay.
so nobody says to us, hey, you're in
What?
charge
No,
of
no,
all
I'm
that.
I was thinking, sorry, yeah, talking to myself there, Gary. Sorry about that.
Yeah, we're in the wrap-up.
We're in the wrap-up.
We sweep the floor.
We all,
Oh, we get this,
Yeah, we're good.
you guys good with that? Sidewalk, all right.
Yeah,
You get the floor.
All right. So, town charter bylaw discussion. So, this is really on the agenda to engage in discussions about potential revisions to water restriction, water ban violations. So, met with Attorney Giorgio from KP Law, I believe it was yesterday, to discuss kind of what our options are for amending the bylaw as it exists and what would be possible for some of the other things that we discussed. So we had talked briefly, I think, in the past about having water ban violation fees go on water user accounts if they, as opposed to the non-criminal citation that we had to do this year. So Attorney Giorgio advised that there isn't anything within the Mass General Law that would allow us to assess ban violations to the water user account, but instead we could go through with a special act of legislation to adopt a home rule petition or home rule charter petition for including that. But that's likely going to be a or beyond a year process, because it will have to go through town meeting, get voted there. I believe it has to be voted again on the ballot, and then it has to get up through the state legislation for approval, and then once the state blesses it, if they bless it, it comes back and goes into effect. So we left that meeting where Attorney Giorgio is going to draft language to that effect that would summarize that in concept with assessing ban violations to water user accounts. Also, another component of that, and tying back to the current bylaw, our current bylaw has a fee structure of $50 first offense, $100 per second and subsequent offense. What we can do in the interim, while we get the special act working through its process, is amend the fines within the existing bylaw. Now, that said, the max fine that we're allowed to assess through Mass General Law is $300. So we could amend the bylaw as written to remove the 50, 100, and it could be 100, 300, or any combination thereof that the board would like to do. But I do believe that at least for spring and summer next year, if we do not get recovery within the aquifer and do find ourselves in water restrictions again, we would be operating under the bylaw with the non-criminal municipal citations as we have been.
And just for full disclosure, Noreen and I were at the meeting yesterday with Dan and Giorgio, so just so everyone knows as well. Noreen.
And with that note, I'm just going to clarify my understanding of the timeline so we can see if the three of us who were there agree. So, you know, it's going to be, no matter what we do, it's going to be half of the staff, because we're going to have kind of like two programs going on at once till it all gets settled. But, so, Dan and his helpers, as I call them, could rewrite the existing bylaw for a spring town meeting article, and with that one, all that would do would be change the amounts of the fines to get them in line, you know, with, you know, our policy had different amounts, so probably just move them up to 300, and at least that would, and that's what would be in existence for next summer. If that passes at this town meeting, then that would go into effect. I'm not sure if it's immediately or July 1st, but whatever, one of those two. So that's what we would have to use for this coming year. As to the second piece of three, the whole, what did he call it? The home rule petition that John Giorgio would write for us, that would have an increase to the fine. It would have, most importantly, that we would add the fines to the user's account. And then John went into some other forms of civil penalty, but to the three of us anyway, the most important part was that ability to add the fine to the user's account, so that they don't have to go through the whole ticket business and district court business and everything else. And John felt that, you know, whenever you fine somebody or charge somebody, you either have to, you know, they have to have some ability to appeal it. You know, they can't just slap a fine on somebody and say that's life, you know, you have to pay it. So as part of that home rule petition would be the language that says we would add the fine to the user's account, but the resident would have the ability to appeal to the court in Orleans, I believe.
I think it would be to the Water Commission
that's
for
right.
abatement first, and then the appellate court, I believe, would be, if the Water Commission denies the abatement
You're
for
right.
the fine, it would be, they could file with the appellate court.
So that means that all those fines, which is fine, didn't mean that, would come to us. And then if we denied them then, you know, if they said, no, we weren't using it, and we said yes, and we denied them, then they still would have the option to go to court. But they would go to court, rather than the onus being on this department to take everybody to court. So, and a lot of people just pay, you know, so that would unburden the department. Excuse me. The timeline on that would be, this would also go for May town meeting in an article, And if it passed, then it would be on the ballot. And if that passed, then it would go up to the legislature. And John did say that they might have a little trouble with the part about adding the fine to the account. Not that many people do it, but, you know, if we push for it, you know, you never know. But if things went well, then that might be approved by the legislature. You know, if we got it up there in June, maybe January-ish of the following year, you know, so that might bring some relief for the summer of '24 season, but not before that. So that's just the timeline, so you know. I'm gonna leave the third part for Dan to explain about the other procedure.
Drought tier concept. So another concept that tossed around, and I still, full disclaimer, I really need to sit down with admin staff, Wellesley, because we need to peel back the onions on what our billing software can do. As we've been trying to think about this a little bit more since that discussion. So I think we threw it out at the last meeting, the concept of a drought tier, where upon implementing a mandatory water ban, that would then also implement a drought tier for water usage, where anyone above and beyond X gallons would end up paying a premium for that water. We would potentially, and as we were picking it apart, I was thinking, how do we handle industrial, commercial in comparison to residential? You know, so there's a few more questions that I need to get answers to, but in concept, you know, it would be a two-pronged approach. We would have the ability and mechanism to fine for violators who are ignoring the ban, and as we discovered this past year, we don't have the ability to police 10,000 accounts, and there are people who used water and didn't get fined, didn't get reported, didn't get violated. There was evidence of, you know, some of the $50 tickets that we issued had almost 200,000 gallons of water use. I know that they were irrigating more than that one time they were caught, but we don't have the mechanism or ability to track them. So in situations like those, they would have received a $300 violation fine, but if they continued ignoring the restrictions, they would ultimately, their usage would tick them into that drought tier, and they would ultimately pay a premium on their water bill for having violated the water bill and, you know, using that consumption. So in concept, it kind of allows, it encourages people to conserve on their own, not wanting to pay a drought tier for 100,000+ gallons of water. Like I said, still need to do a little bit of digging and seeing what our billing software can do, because it could be such that we would have to meter read when we implement the ban. So if we don't have ban the entire billing quarter, we would have to read before we implement the ban, read after we lift the ban, and then read again. And then I don't know how the computer software would be able to quantify those 3 separate usage amounts. So I got to do a little bit more homework, but I think that's another option that would help hopefully mitigate those folks who were thinking they were being sneaky and getting away with it. You know, if they know that there's a drought tier based on water usage, they may think twice about gaming the system.
So you have an ouch factor in it?
Yeah.
Or we would still do fines.
Yes. The ultimate goal is to stop, you know, stop the non-essential outdoor water use.
Can I bring something up? I'm sorry. I don't think it's anything we want to do, but just to put it out there so that we talked about it, which is what I mentioned before, that in the western part of the country, some really desperate places are using restrictors, and you put them on from the curb so you don't have to go on people. I mean, I don't know that much about them, but, you know, somebody technical will figure it out, but it actually, you know, stops your water availability at a certain point, you know, and, but I don't know if we want to discuss that. I just want to put that out there where the idea is to stop the usage, not to just fine the usage.
Essentially, those are just a washer with a smaller hole, and because of that restriction in diameter, it basically prevents the irrigation heads from popping up, but it's still enough water for domestic purposes.
They can be put on the meter too.
Yeah.
Judith,
And I don't want to get off topic, but I do want to know, did you guys with the attorney discuss well water, wells?
I had-
Because for me, these things need to be figured out together.
Yeah.
Because it's the same water source,
I was gonna
you know, sorry.
I was gonna mention that, because it was something that Sandy and I had talked about again yesterday. And when I did speak to Giorgio about it, he said, you know, talk to Orleans, because they're the ones who just did it, so I'm gonna reach out to Orleans.
Okay.
The one thing, and kind of zooming out a little bit, and I don't know if I'll be able to get any info from DEP, but where we're considering amending the bylaw, I guess there's a component that we don't know yet. There's uncertainty about our Water Management Act permit that we don't have. So they're likely to impose, if the proposed regulations for the new Water Management Act permits go through, they're going to be proposing to limit our ability to pump much more stringently than they have historically. So depending on what our restrictions are, we may want to include additional language or other information within the bylaw that is tied to our Water Management Act permit. So just as far as timing, you know, I think we do move forward with the special act, but at least can keep in the back of our heads that this may be something we have to go through again if the permit comes through. You know, we may also say, we don't agree with the restrictions that DEP is telling us to adhere to. For example, 2016 versus 2022. In 2016, we were in a drought. They painted Cape Cod in a broad brush stroke, and that was due to, they declared droughts not just for groundwater levels, it's also for fire likelihood, precipitation, stream flow. None of those three factors have any impact on the water that we have during the summer season. Our recharge all comes from winter precipitation. So they could be imposing drought conditions or drought declarations on our region when the groundwater is where it was in 2016, above average. And we would not, in those instances, want to impose restrictions, because if we don't pump that water, it's going to migrate to the ocean, and we're not going to be able to use it. It's not going to stay there for next season. So, you know, it may get into a situation where we are in disagreement with what DEP is telling us to do, and that may warrant kind of a bigger discussion of how we want to manage it. When I started these discussions with them 6 years ago, we were going to tie it to the Brewster monitoring well. That's the well logs that I bring to these meetings oftentimes. It was going to be based on that well level and precipitation events. My understanding is that what they're proposing now is not to do it on that specific of a level. So if they go that route, that could lend us to being in restrictions much, much more frequently, and for no good reason, which, from a public standpoint, if there's no good reason and we're implementing it, you know, how are they going to feel when we actually do need them to? So I just want to throw that out there, I guess, for...
It's probably going to be something you'll have to explain again and again, because it's a continuing, so many pieces to it.
And then with the Orleans pieces, you don't know yet, but I'm just wondering, is it something that we should,
How does that work?
think
So
about?
that is, as I understand, it's just a simple bylaw, so that we would have to put an article before town meeting with language including private irrigation wells will be, you know, regulated by the water department in drought conditions, and we'll have, you know, something to that effect. And then that's when it starts.
And would we have time to do that
Yeah.
before the May?
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, we should take a look at that as a Band-Aid.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And it is passed.
as I understand it, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, we'll be relying really solely on policing from either passerbyers or, you know, if we end up hiring someone to drive around for enforcement, but
I see.
Yeah.
We don't have a meter reading on it, so. They won't get the drought tears. Yeah.
No, we definitely should take a look at that.
And just some stats, update as of today for water ban violations. We have collected 71%, or $35,500 out of the $50,200 that we billed. We know of 4 people contesting, so we do have some paperwork to fill out for 4 who are looking to go to the district court. And we have a small handful that are unpaid, and what we're looking to do now is prioritize those from highest dollar amount down, trying to honor the magistrate's request to please don't bring me $50 fines to here. So we're going to start at the 1,000 and I think work back to the 350 area and see where it takes us. So that's an update on that.
All right, any questions regarding that? Dan, superintendent's report.
Just brief updates. The well contractor is planning to be out tomorrow, this week. They've been delayed a little bit, but they are planning to get out there here this week. We did have another issue arise at the small well M2, which is right behind the electrical building over there. We thought it was a VFD failure, went out, we had a VFD on the shelf, so we swapped that out. The VFD is a variable frequency drive that controls the speed of the motor.
I was gonna say that.
So we thought that was the issue, tried that out. It appears to be the motor. This is a submersible well, submersible motor, so the motor's 30 feet down, so we don't have access to it. So they're gonna come and pull the pump this week, and I believe he said he should have a new motor on Monday, so that should be back up.
So there's 3 of them.
Yeah.
done.
So then we got 4 and 7 also.
Did it last as long as you thought it would, roughly? Give or take a year?
This one, you know, the submersible wells, I mean,
These are the oldest
the
ones.
well, they're not that old, but they're kind of,
Oh.
as it's been explained to, well, the well's the oldest, but the
Yeah.
motor itself, I think we did 4 or 5 years ago.
Oh.
But these motors
For an under
They're
motor, yeah.
kind of throwaway, which is why we're trying to get back to the vertical turbine style. Unfortunately, it's just not an option with these ones because there's no building, there's no thing to host it, so everything goes in the ground. But other than that, just coming back from Thanksgiving, so I haven't done it.
All right.
All right.
Commissioners report, Mr. Thompson, you have anything?
I have nothing.
Ms. Underwood?
No, just that Words on Water, poetry, playwriting, and prose writing contest, 5th year. The submissions are due December 28th. If you know any writers or aspiring writers, please check out blueinstitute.org.
Mr. Underwood?
I have nothing.
Mr. Goff?
No, all set.
All right, let's, MMA is up again in January. I think it's the 20th and 21st. If you are interested in going, let Sandy know, and she will register you for the event.
Back on in person.
Yeah, back on in person.
Same place?
Yep. What else do I have? Oh, last year, we did gift cards for the employees. I don't know if that's something you guys want to do again this year. I think it was what we did. I think we did Dunkin' Donuts cards or something. Was it $10 a person or something? I think we had 15 employees. It was $150. By 5 is what, $30 each?
Mm-hmm.
Is that
Wanna do
something-
that?
Is that something you guys want to do again?
Yeah.
All right. I'll grab those. And then the date, next meeting. Week of, what, the, week of the 16th? You want to stay with, Wednesday the 14th?
I like that.
I like it.
Well, I'm just thinking the 16th is my daughter's birthday, but it's also the date that the comments are due for the watershed permit and Title V regulation changes, so that would be a good we can hopefully have final draft.
Okay, so I'll have the gift cards here for the 14th, meeting of the 14th.
Bring
Does that sound good?
cash.
All right, 14th.
And how much is it?
$30 each, yeah.
So, the next meeting is the 14th at 11:30.
14th. Wow, this is even better. It wasn't full cash now, nice. 11,
Only does 100.
30.
Yeah, just take that.
The plumber.
Something like that.
All right.
It was.
Probably shouldn't be doing this on camera, but. Put your hundred back.
Did you say, oh, yeah, no camera, right?
Yeah.
There you go.
Let's see if I have a bag.
Hey, that's good.
I needed to change that.
11:30?
That worked out well. All right, great.
11:30?
11:30, yep.
Great.
All right, we have a meeting, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you, everybody.
Great.
Okay, thank you.
Good.
Thanks for picking those up.
Yeah,